There's a real psychological reason some people pull you close, some pull away, and some seem to do both without warning. Psychologists actually have names for these patterns, and once you learn them, you'll start noticing them everywhere, including in yourself. It's called attachment theory, and it explains why you approach relationships the exact way you do, often without realizing it. It comes from real, decades-old research, and it's one of the most useful psychological frameworks for understanding your own relationships. There are 3 main attachment styles psychologists have identified, and today we're breaking down exactly what each one actually means. We'll cover where these patterns actually come from, what each of the 3 styles looks like in real relationships, and whether they can ever change. By the end, you'll probably recognize yourself or someone important to you in at least one of these 3 patterns. Let's start with where attachment styles actually come from, and it goes back much further than your adult relationships. In the 1950s, a psychologist named John Bowlby proposed that the bond between infants and caregivers shapes how we relate to people for life. He theorized that babies develop a kind of internal blueprint based on how reliably their caregiver responded to their needs. Later, psychologist Mary Ainsworth tested this idea directly, using a famous experiment now known as the strange situation. In it, toddlers were briefly separated from their caregiver, then reunited, while researchers carefully observed exactly how each child reacted. Some children were upset but easily comforted once reunited. Others stayed distant. Others seemed anxious and inconsistent the whole time. From these reactions, Ainsworth identified distinct attachment patterns that, decades later, researchers found often carry into adulthood. In 2010, authors Amir Levine and Rachel Heller took this research and applied it directly to adult romantic relationships in their book, Attached. According to this research, most adults fall into one of 3 primary attachment styles in how they handle closeness and connection. The first style is called anxious attachment, and if you've ever felt intense fear of losing someone you love, this might sound familiar. People with an anxious attachment style tend to crave closeness deeply and often worry their partner doesn't feel the same way. They're highly sensitive to small signs of distance, a slow text reply, a shorter phone call, a slightly different tone of voice. This sensitivity isn't dramatic overreaction on purpose. It's a nervous system that's genuinely on alert for signs of abandonment. This pattern often develops when a caregiver's responsiveness growing up was inconsistent, sometimes warm and present, sometimes distracted or unavailable. As a result, that child may have learned they had to stay extra alert just to get their needs met reliably. As adults, people with this style often seek a lot of reassurance and may feel real anxiety during any relationship uncertainty. This doesn't mean something is wrong with them. It means their nervous system learned early that closeness required vigilance. Understanding this can be the first step toward recognizing the pattern instead of just feeling swept up inside it. The second style is called avoidant attachment, and it often looks like the exact opposite of the anxious pattern. People with an avoidant attachment style tend to highly value independence and can feel uncomfortable with too much closeness. When a relationship starts feeling very intimate or emotionally intense, they often instinctively pull back, even if they do care. This isn't necessarily a lack of love at all. It's frequently a learned strategy for staying emotionally safe. This pattern often develops when a caregiver was consistently distant, dismissive of emotions, or uncomfortable with physical closeness growing up. As a result, that child may have learned that relying on others too heavily wasn't safe, or simply wasn't useful. As adults, people with this style often prize self-sufficiency and may withdraw exactly when a relationship gets emotionally serious. Again, this isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system that learned independence was the safest strategy available. The third style is called secure attachment, and it's generally considered the healthiest and most stable of the 3 patterns. People with a secure attachment style are generally comfortable both with real closeness and with healthy independence at the same time. They can express their needs directly, trust their partner reasonably, and handle relationship conflict without spiraling into panic or shutting down. This pattern usually develops when a caregiver was consistently responsive, warm, and reliably present throughout early childhood. As a result, that child learned relationships were fundamentally safe and that their needs would generally be met. Researchers estimate that roughly half of adults fall primarily into this secure category, though the other patterns are extremely common too. If this is you, relationships likely feel steady rather than frightening or restrictive, which is genuinely a real strength. Here's where it gets especially interesting. Anxious and avoidant types are often strongly, painfully drawn to each other in relationships. The anxious partner's pursuit of closeness can trigger the avoidant partner's instinct to withdraw, which in turn increases the anxious partner's fear. This creates a painful push-and-pull cycle that researchers sometimes call the anxious-avoidant trap, and it's an extremely common relationship pattern. The good news is that attachment styles aren't a life sentence. They're patterns, and patterns genuinely can shift over time. Researchers describe this as becoming earned secure, developing a more secure style through self-awareness, therapy, or a stable relationship. Simply understanding your own pattern and your partner's pattern is often the very first step toward actually changing it. So here's what these 3 attachment styles actually tell you about how you and the people around you approach relationships. Anxious attachment craves closeness and quietly fears distance. Avoidant attachment values independence and quietly fears too much closeness. Secure attachment holds both closeness and independence comfortably, without much fear driving the relationship dynamic at all. None of these patterns make you broken. They're simply blueprints your nervous system built early, and blueprints can be redrawn. So which pattern sounds most like you, or like someone important in your life? It's genuinely worth thinking about. If this helped you understand your relationships a little differently, there's more psychology like this coming soon. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.